Okay, good morning, everybody. You're all very welcome to this ATU Donegal Letterkenny. It's our dissemination event to share with you our experience of the MICAD, our Competency Assessment Document for undergraduate nursing programs here, and where we actually placed it online. So I'm conscious that just to note that this session is being recorded, and I just want to personally welcome you and the large numbers. I know there's people still coming in, but we've had a great response from all of the education bodies, including ATU, Sligo, Donegal, Castlebar. We've Trinity University in Limerick, we've SEUT in Waterford, DKIT, and obviously, most importantly, to acknowledge representation from academia, from nurse practice development and clinical or allied healthcare professions. So whatever discipline you're in, we're delighted you can join us, and we hope that by sharing our story, it might actually invoke for you to consider our project that we placed online in collaboration with Axia. So this project was a direct collaboration between the nursing department in Donegal campus and Axia. And the real purpose of this was to actually enhance practice assessment in terms of student nurses by replacing the paper-based system, which we're all familiar with, the NCAD or the National Competency Assessment, to a digital portfolio. So as you're aware, as a HEI, we're all using this, all 14 HEIs, and Axia Ireland is a well-established digital company, and it's a parent company that has been operating in Ireland for the last 10 years. So I want to welcome and acknowledge that one of the directors, Chris Peat, will be presenting from a digital Axia perspective as we progress through the session. So basically, it's been broken into 3 sections. My job is the easy job is to welcome you and to share our story, and I will be chairing the session. I'll then be asking Professor Thomas Kearns to share his reflection on the importance and the benefits of those involved in education professional development in adapting digital solutions like we have. And then Chris Peat, the chair of Axia, will speak to you on how to legitimize and to the importance in terms of the concerns about adopting a digital approach. So with regards to, before I hand over to Thomas, I just want to say that this wasn't without its challenge. It involved change, the mindset, individuals, the way things we were doing, and it did require a huge amount of agility and resilience from all of our partners. And it's important to note, as we know, clinical assessment is very much a tripartite. So it's the preceptor, the clinical registered nurse or midwife, it's the practice development, and the whole jigsaw of that in terms of allocation functions officers, SALOs, CPCs, practice development. It's very much a large jigsaw. So getting everybody to endorse and to move from paper format to going online wasn't without its challenges. And so I want you to listen to our stories of how we embrace that change and overcome the challenges as, a holistic partner in terms of collaboration with our allied healthcare professionals. So more importantly, the outcome of this was a win-win, not just for students, but for, as you'll hear later on, our practice development partners, preceptors, and linked lecturers and academic staff attached. So at this point, I'm now part 1. I'm going to ask for Thomas Kearns maybe to come in, and Thomas is going to share his reflections on the importance and the benefits, more importantly, of digital solutions. So I'll hand over to you now, Professor Tom Kearns. Thank you.
Thanks, Louise, and good morning, colleagues. And when I was asked to speak at this event, I was obviously delighted. I want to congratulate Louise and the team up there for their recent awards as well in relation to this area. So when I was reflecting on what I would say for a few minutes, and Chris knows, like Chris, I can talk forever. it's getting me to shut up is the problem. I said I would try and keep it short. And what I'm really going to talk to you about is a story of a relationship. And a story of a relationship that essentially began 2 decades ago in 2009 now. And many of you, or some of you, will recall that I worked in the NMBI as in the education department of the NMBI. So I'm going to come at it from a dual perspective, one as a regulator, and then subsequently since 2014 as an educator, although a recently retired educator. So in terms of the nurse regulatory side of the story, I was involved at the time in the noughties in the development of nurse prescribing, and you'll all recall the advances we made as professions in terms of advanced practice and prescriptive authority was very significant. And at the time, the then Minister Mary Harney requested that the NMBI designed a voluntary portfolio for prescribers. We didn't have the authority in legislation or in statutory instrument to make the completion of the portfolio mandatory, or indeed to seek evidence in relation to the portfolio. So I was commissioned, or was asked by the board at the time, to do this work. And eventually what came out of the work was a paper-based tool, which was eventually shared with RMPs to enable them maintain their competence in relation to prescriptive authority. Subsequent to that, and indeed during that time, I was doing my own doctorate, and my doctorate was in relation to the maintenance and management of competence assessment and CPD of my nurses and midwives. And most of you will recall that Part 11 of the Act in 2011 if you like, provided a framework for that work, although my research had commenced before then. And essentially what I was trying to do from a research perspective was try and put a structure and process around a scheme for managing the maintenance of professional competence. And as you know, that legislation now makes it explicit the responsibilities for the regulator, employer, and the registrant in this area, although that part of the Act is not being commenced. And what my research identified, that a component of such a scheme to maintain or manage one's own competence should be portfolio-based, should be evidential. But significant evidence in terms of both the literature and indeed my own findings in Ireland pointed to this being electronic in terms of it being useful in terms of the 21st century. Another job that I undertook while being in NMBI, while doing my own doctorate, was these site visits. And Louise and many of you around the table, whether you're CPCs, practice development preceptors, you'll be familiar with these processes whereby a team from the NMBI would turn up and spend a number of days in the services, in the partnership, looking at the operationalization of the requirements and standards in terms of the undergraduate education. And what struck me at the time, literally from 2001 right up to 2013, was the competence assessment process in clinical practice, that tripartite relationship that Louise was talking about in terms of the academics, the CPCs, the practice development, and the preceptors, around the domains of competence. I recall being absolutely amazed by the documentation that was being used by students, and I can still visualize these huge lever arch folders. And I remember one colleague at the time, a CPC, telling me that one portfolio that they were using, and I won't mention the university, was 80 pages long. And I you know, the physical, you know, the physical labor associated with dragging these things every now and again to a clinical site seemed to me incredulous. So looking at the work that I was doing as a regulator in terms of prescriptive authority, in terms of my own doctorate, in terms of undertaking these site visits, it was evidential in all this work that the documentation of and the maintenance of competence and its assessment should and would and could in the 21st century benefit from some sort of an electronic platform and tool to facilitate this. I mean, after all, we do everything electronically now. This experience created an opportunity for a professional conversation. That conversation with Axia began, as I said, almost 15 years ago, as the tools that they had designed on their own electronic platform provided for me what I consider to be an ideal solution, an evidence-informed solution to the challenges of competence assessment at pre-registration, and indeed from my perspective at CPD and competence assessment levels. And indeed, I've argued with Chris and many others, to those who listen, I guess, that such a portfolio could and should follow a nurse and midwife right throughout their career, from the first day they enter the profession to the day they decide to remove themselves from the register as a retiree or whatever. So I saw an e-portfolio, an electronic portfolio, as the ideal methodology to enable us assess the competence development of our new entrants, of our new students, right up and right through to an advanced practitioner level and to a very senior clinician. So I saw it as a process that we could use right throughout our careers in the ideal world. So that now that the requirement for competence assessment and CPD is eventually going to come to all registrants, that for the future, our colleagues would be used to using such an e-portfolio either as a peer assessment process or a self-assessment process or some sort of combined process right throughout our professional careers. In 2014, I left the NMBI and was appointed Professor of Nursing and Executive Director and Dean of the Faculty at RCSI. And this is where our relationship with AXIA continued to grow. We commissioned AXIA to develop an e-portfolio to support all the offerings that we have in terms of lifelong learning and professional development. And therefore, any nurse or midwife undertaking any of our CPD programs could have access to this e-portfolio for themselves. It wasn't for us to look at this e-portfolio or provide advice or guidance or for them to share it with anyone, but it was something for the registrant themselves to, I guess, support their own agenda in terms of lifelong learning, which we all do every day in a very structured way. And what this e-portfolio permits the registrant to do is to maintain their own resume, maintain their own CV, undertake personal development planning, maintain a record of their CPD and their lifelong learning activities, and indeed use reflection against the NMBI domains of competence in relation to what they've learned, in relation to what they need to learn. In 2016, we, as Louise mentioned, were instrumental in establishing an Irish subsidiary of the company. And this was post-Brexit, the decision made in 2016 in the United Kingdom. And the faculty for a number of years actually hosted the office of AXIA Digital Ireland in our own buildings in RCSI. And we have continued to work to constantly review and revise, to a constantly reviewed and revised MOU between AXIA and the faculty as our needs change and evolve. Today, the faculty's fellowship and membership by examination are undertaken through the AXIA Digital e-portfolio. What has been incredible has been this iterative relationship that we've experienced between ourselves and AXIA Digital, which has provided us with an opportunity to constantly revise the platform as we learn from it and as we learn through it, and as the people who use the platform learn and use the document. And actually have been brilliant in this regard because, it is not just about us identifying how we can constantly revise and improve the platform for the better experience of those conducting the assessments and those using the tools, but the responsiveness of the organization has been incredible. Subsequently, we've been completing a bridging program, a bridging degree program, and that, very much like Louise's program, which is a program that will lead to registration, uses the AXIA Digital e-portfolio tool in the very same way to assess and determine the competence of the pre-registration student based on the NMBI domains of competence. Finally, the faculty are in the process of finishing the development of a mobile continuous professional development application. Testing of the product was completed in Q1 of this year, and a viable product will be ready for market in 2024. Significantly, this application, the CPD app, this My CPD Flow app, will interoperate with the faculty's e-portfolio. And this will enable the electronic capture of CPD activity undertaken by the nurse or the midwife on the mobile app to be automatically uploaded into the registrant's existing e-portfolio. And this will allow organizations, employers, and registrants to demonstrate to whomever, be it the NMBI, be it HICWA, be it the Mental Health Commission, or be it any regulator, the competence and CPD activity undertaken by the registrant. And of course, it will provide the registrant with a record of CPD competence development and reflection captured in this portfolio. So finally, my work in regulation and latterly in education leadership could not have occurred without the collegial relationship the faculty has developed with Chris, Richard, and other colleagues in AXIA, and to them I'm very grateful. Thanks very much, Louise.
And thank you very much, Professor Thomas Kearns. And just to note, on behalf of ATU Donegal, Department of Nursing and Healthcare, and everybody in this forum, because I think you probably know most of us, which we've now got 62, we want to congratulate you and offer you all the best wishes on your retirement. And I've no doubt you're going to be busy in other chapters and other aspects. So congratulations on your retirement. And thank you for sharing that with us, because I think this was very much a huge change for us in Donegal here in the Northwest, with our allied healthcare professionals in intellectual disability, mental health and in general nursing. But it's not the first time we've done something like this. And I see Michelle Donnelly's online here. So Letterkenny University Hospital would have been one of the first pilots to actually implement and introduce e-rostering. So we have been courageous and agile in terms of implementing digital transformation solutions. So it's important to note that, you know, having that mindset, that growth mindset in terms of responding to digital solutions pre-pandemic, and now more so, as you've said, post-pandemic, is really, really very relevant. So I just want to acknowledge that the rostering at then, and I know Michelle and I would have talked about the challenges of moving, are renowned across all disciplines, regardless of what it is, and those common challenges and issues that arise. Let's just say our next speaker, Mr. Chris Peat, has had loads of experience of dealing them with, you know, in the UK context and from an Irish perspective, Northwest. So I'm conscious that quite a number of people may have just joined in the interim. So you're all very welcome again to the MyCAD dissemination. We're just really at the context and background. I've welcomed, and Professor Tom Kearns has just given some reflections. So at this point now, I'm actually going to hand over to Mr. Chris Peat, and Chris has been instrumental on implementing and coordinating and collaborating with us. And Chris is one of the directors with Axia Digital Ireland. And I'm going to hand over to Chris, and he's going to speak now of the importance of really adopting, you know, the digital approach in the context of, you know, making life easier for everybody involved, but more so from his experience in the UK, and also, not that we've traumatized you too much, Chris, more so maybe Max, who we'll hear from later, but I'll hand over now to Chris. And just to note that it is being recorded. We are keeping an eye on the chat, but we will, when we finish the formal part of it, have a questions and answers. So we're absolutely open to all questions and sharing any experiences that we might be able to help. So I'll hand over to you, Chris, at this point.
Great, thank you, Louise, and thank you, Thomas, particularly. It's very kind as ever, and we just as much value the relationship we've had with himself and with RCSI as well. I'm going to try and do the impossible. I'm going to try and imagine what are the concerns and worries that people have brought along to this seminar, and to spend a little bit of time trying to answer those quite quickly, accepting the fact there'll be a question and answer session afterwards, and acknowledging the fact that I won't have necessarily got all of the questions, all the concerns you may have addressed, but I'm going to have a go. I mean, just very quickly, 2012 was when we first started working at that time with Southampton University. In developing the first practice assessment document with them, and then we've gone on, as Louise has said, to work with other universities in the UK, and now we're delighted to be working with our colleagues here, where I am actually. I'm in Letterkenny with our colleagues here, who have done an amazing job to, as we'll see a bit later on. At the start of the projects, I'll just list out some of the concerns that are always there. You know, what about access in hospitals and in the community? What about people who are afraid of technology? How secure is people's data on the system? What about GDPR? Will we need to buy any additional IT equipment? What about training? And I'm just going to just go through those very quickly and give you some initial thoughts about those. As you can imagine, I've spent a lot of time over the years thinking about those challenges and answering the worries people have. The reality is, just to say very quickly, that the concerns that people have, it's amazing how quick they disappear once they actually get involved in the actual system itself. But I'm not at all wishing to diminish those concerns, because they're real and they need to be acknowledged. So if you do any technology project, you've got two big challenges. One challenge is to get people's minds into doing things online rather than on paper. And then often the challenge is around actually getting to learn a new system. And in one way, with the first challenge, I think people more and more now do online. They get online and so on. And the other challenge we've tried to mitigate, the major fear people have had, is do we need to train to learn how to do assessment differently, because your system only works in a particular way and we have to change the way we do things. And the beauty about the technology that we've been spending 25 years developing is that we're able to take any assessment system, any assessment document, and faithfully replace it fully online. It's exactly the same way that people are used to. So you will hear quite a lot in the video that we're going to be playing for you, colleagues, students, other people saying, it's no different. It's exactly the same document that we work with day in, day out. It's just digitally. And crucially allied to that is we have within the technology the ability to control who can see and do what, depending on the role they have in the assessment process, be they preceptor, assistant preceptor, be they year lead, be they SALO, whatever they may be in the actual process. We can control what they see, what they can do, and so on. So, and therefore, it takes away a major challenge. Certainly, there was lots of calls to us about we need lots of training, but the truth is, I think it's fair to say that once people got onto the site, they could see it was something we're very familiar with, and they could start to use it. And elsewhere, we've applied the same methodology and the same approach to numerous other health-based courses. So if you were to go to Bournemouth, you'd find every single health course is now electronically delivered on an electronic portfolio. So some quick questions and quick things that I know. Do you need to purchase any IT equipment for your students to use this? I think Louise will confirm they haven't bought any additional IT equipment to make this work. Again, you will see on the video very powerfully the student saying, any device with a browser, it just works. I can just get it. I use multiple devices to use. So the notion that anybody needs to actually buy any equipment to make this work is absolutely, well, I can tell you in all the projects we've done, that's never been a requirement. And every project we've done has worked well. And then the other question is, how do individuals get onto it? How do they get onto the site? And so there's a mixture. I mean, obviously, there are certain people whose permissions about what they can see and do needs to be really rigorously looked after. So CPCs, year leads, tutors who've got multiple students, their logins are very important in that sense. You've got to make them very secure, and the admin will set those up. But for a preceptor in a hospital, they set their own account up on the system. And I got Max to look this morning, and we currently have 846 preceptors just in this geographical area registered to use mycad.ie. So the actual process, again, people get fearful about how do we get all these people on the system? Well, the reality is they go on the homepage, they register for the system, and we have 846 as we sit here today. And that's not bad from a kind of a start we've had. So people, and our people are to do it. Again, security about information, particularly in Ireland. I know what you've been through in here. I mean, just to reassure you, as an organisation, we have a strong commitment to it. We have civic people working on it. We're accredited to ISO 27001 and ISO 9001. And we don't only have robust firewalls, but we ask you always proactively detecting any attack on our servers through our security operations center. So again, we run some sites with 1 million users on. So as you can imagine, we run sites for government over in the UK. We have to be very strong around security, and we are. And arguably those security measures are far higher level than required. We don't hold any financial information, and in lots of ways, therefore, we're not quite as attractive in the worst sense of the word place to go to. What happens if you all start to say to us, which would be wonderful, yeah, we want to have a go at doing it where we are. Is it scalable? How well do you deal with scale? Well, again, if I say to you, we have one site used by 1 million trainee accountants across the world for the ACCA, accountancy professional body, and if I say to you that all the trainee dentists in the UK and all the trainee pharmacists in the UK on their programs where they have to create a portfolio of work experience use our system, I think you hopefully get a good sense that our ability to manage more users and control their access and do all the things you'd expect us to do is something we're very happy about, able to do. How do you keep the data separate? Well, obviously it's critical you keep the data separate. You don't want different institutions seeing the data that belongs to another institution. So we're able to kind of put them in silos, make those very clearly distinct silos. So if you're a dentist, for example, each dentist in the UK has a different deanery, and they get attached to that deanery in the same way that, if you imagine, this site might go to different universities, and we create different silos of data for each of the universities. What about GDPR? Well, obviously we're very keen about that, but it's very clear in lots of ways to GDPR. We are the data, you are the data owners. Each institution, Louise and ATU own their data. It's absolutely clear they own their data. The only thing that we do, we're the data processor in GDPR terms. Have we got an agreement in place with ATU? You'll be not surprised to hear that we have an agreement for that, with everything is spelled out very clearly about how GDPR can be managed between us. So I've just really gone on a whistle stop. I can't believe I've gone around that so quickly. I'm very happy, obviously, to talk about other questions. But I think the thing, just to conclude, is again, you'll hear from other colleagues here. Basically, what we've done here at ATU is almost we've worked very intensively with the team here. They've been incredibly helpful, incredibly wise about their decisions on things. And we do have a fully digitalized version of the NCAT document as we sit here, with a whole load of additional reports there as well. And so you will hear soon from the people who are directly using it, and then you'll get a sense of it. But we have one. That's the thing to know. And it's great that we're able today to start the business of sharing out that information with other colleagues elsewhere. Thank you, Louise.
Great, thank you for that, Chris. And while you've worked very diligently, I think all of our partners will agree is that you've listened and you've taken on board, and it's been very much a shared approach in terms of troubleshooting and problem solving to getting to where we are, because, as I said, it wasn't without its challenges. So it's important to note that. So that's really the formal in the terms of part one of the webinar. We've, obviously we've given an overview, the background, the context, and the issues that might actually preempt some further conversations. But the next part is really the part that you've probably all joined, not to listen to me or Thomas or Chris, is to actually get an overview of what does it look like? What was the students' experiences? What did the SALOs think of it? What did the year tutors or the link lecturers think of it? So the next part is really getting into an overview of how we actually implemented it and the presentation. So I'm going to call upon Max, who's actually going to give us now a presentation of the digital version of the National Competency Assessment Document dashboard, mycad.ie site. And he'll also include, actually given just a little bit of a navigation around how you as a user, you being a student or a partner or a link lecturer or a nurse practitioner, that you would actually utilize and sort of navigate around the different reports available. So Max, handing over to you, and then following Max's session, we're going to play a video which is sharing the experiences of our students, our CPCs, tutors, and our allocation staff. So I'll hand over now to you, Max, to take us through the dashboard. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So this is MyCAD, and you can get there by going to mycad.ie. And as Chris said, you can access this through any device that has a web browser and an internet connection. So when you get here, you'll see there'll be a login page and then some information here with some user guides and video tutorials if any are needed. If you're a preceptor, registered nurse or CNM and you don't have an account, you can register via this link. So when you come here, you'll type in your email address. So we recommend you do your work email address because this is used by the student to search for you. So the student can either search for you via your last name or your email address, and that will bring up the results. So yeah, we suggest you use your work email address. No emails get sent to this address. It's just used for searching, and it's also used for these two links here. So forgotten your password and forgotten your username. So if you ever do forget your username or password, we'll email a link to the email address that you enter here as a preceptor. So clicking continue. If there was an account that already existed on the site with this email address, it would alert you to that and would not let you create an account. But here, no account exists with this test email. So the option to create the account is available. And to do that, enter the first name, last name, username, password, and whether you're a preceptor, associate preceptor, CNM, AHP, or registered nurse. So just tick any that apply to you. If you're not a preceptor, but you want to register as either like, say, any other user type, so a year lead, CPC, or student, an administrator would be responsible for creating that account. So for the purpose of this, I'm just going to log in as my CPC test account. And this is the dashboard of the CPC account. So year leads, preceptors and CPCs, their dashboards will look very similar. So here, when you first log in, you'll see every student that is currently connected to you on an active placement. If it's a brand new account, it will be blank, so no students will be linked to you at the moment. It's the responsibility of the student to link the CPCs, year leads, preceptors, associate preceptors, etc. It's their responsibility to link those users to their placement. If you ever need to change your password, you can do that via this link here. And there's options up here, which I'll cover later on. So for this one, I'm going to view this student, so max test 1 on this placement. And to do that, I just click view against that row. And doing that will build the portfolio. So this may take a little bit longer than other pages would with loading because it's building the entire student dashboard. And as you can see here, it loads that placement and all of the options here. If you'd like to go back to that dashboard to see the other students, you can do that by clicking home. Or if you want to reload this dashboard, or if you've gone into a section, say the attendance record, and wish to come back to the student dashboard, you can do that by clicking the student name up here, or these two links here. And this link, this alert will also appear at the bottom as well, just in case. So this is a dashboard. Here will contain all of the sections that you can complete during this placement. The placement details here, so the placement name. So the student will see a list of all of the different placement locations that are currently available, and we can add to that list as needed. The placement type, this is another important part of the placement. So for this test account, it's a long placement, but then there's also options depending on the year and course that the student's on. So there can be either short placements, specialist placements, or school placements. There's a couple of others as well. So depending on the placement type that they select will control what sections appear here. So if they selected a short placement, for example, the mid-interview would not be available. but because this is a long placement, the mid-interview is there. Scrolling down, you can see all of the preceptors, associate preceptors, registered nurses, CPCs, and linked lecturers that are linked to the student's placement. If I was logged in as a student, there would be an edit button against each one of these items, and the student would be able to click that, see a search form, and search for the preceptor or CPC and link them to the placement. So as you can see here, there's a lot of test accounts that I have linked to my placement, but I don't have a registered nurse yet. And scrolling up, you can see the year leads here as well. So at the minute, I have just one year lead linked to the entire year. Further to this, there's indicators on each section. So here you can see how many hours have been added or verified for the placement. You can see how many records have been linked to each one. So say for the preliminary interview, you can see that the students completed one preliminary interview on this placement. They only do one, but this just shows that they've signed one out of one and the preceptor's also signed one out of one. But if you look at the final interview, you can see that the student's not signed it and the preceptor's not signed it. Also, there's a refresh icon. So if any of these indicators are incorrect, you can refresh them by clicking this button, and that'll just take you through the building portfolio options again, and it will update these to be correct. So going into the attendance record, this is where the student will record all of their hours. So here you can see I've added quite a few hours already, and they've all been signed off by my preceptor on these dates. So you can see the dates that they were all signed off. You can see if one has not been submitted yet. So this hour here is waiting for the student to sign off. Once they've signed it off, they won't be able to edit that hour record again. And once it has been signed off by the student, the option will be available to sign off that hour. So here you can see this is an hour record that the student signed off. And now I can sign it off using my CPC account. This can be signed off by a preceptor or associate preceptor as well. So clicking sign off will say it will sign it and say who has signed it and when they signed it. So in this case, it's my test CPC account and it was signed today. There's also guidance. So on most sections, there's a guidance option here, and you can click on that and it'll expand the details for anything that's needed. There is an alert on the attendance record. So as you can see here, there's quite a few alerts. So this is because I've changed my dates on my test account, so don't be alarmed by the amount of hours here. So this will just alert you to the fact that a student's added an hour outside of the placement start and end date that they've entered. So here I've said my placement start and end date is 1st of May to the 12th of June. And there's these attendance records which are outside of that start and end date. There's also a report here, so you can view the week by week report for this placement, and doing that will open a new tab. Once the report's built, you can see the placement details here again, the total verified hours, the total verified absent hours, and the total verified repayment of time hours. Again, you'll see that alert just to alert you to the fact that they've added hours outside of that placement start and end date. And then here will be the start of the actual report. So this will be based on the start and end date of the placement. So here's week 1, that's going from the start date, and it goes all the way through to week 7, which is the placement end date. So scrolling up, the hours will then get added here. So on the 1st of the 5th, this test account did 8 hours. On the 2nd, they also did 8 hours. And then this gets added up here. So in week 1, they did 16 hours. And then in week 2, they've done 8 hours. So as the student starts adding their hours, this will become more and more populated. And there's also an option to print. So if you need to, you can click this print and either print it on paper or print it to a PDF. So it's just an option to save it. So going back to the dashboard by clicking the name of the student. The next section is the short placement report. So this is it's only really relevant for the short placements. So going in here, you can download a short placement report by clicking this link. This will get filled out by the student, and then they'll have the option to upload it via this link. So if I click edit, there'll be an option to upload. So choose file, give it a file description, save it. And this test is an attachment that I've updated in the past. If I want to delete that, I can do that by clicking the bin icon. Okay, the next section is the self-evaluation. So this is completed by the student, and all they do is click add new, and they'll complete the form. So in this form, there's 4 fields. So all of the items in bold are the field names. You'll see throughout my test account that there's some Latin text. This is just content to simulate what the student may add or other users may add. So yeah, don't be alarmed by the Latin. Okay, the preliminary interview. So this has been completed by the student and the preceptor. So here you can see when it was completed, when the student signed it, and when the preceptor signed it, and who the preceptor was. And further down here, you've got the actual preliminary interview. So again, the fields are in bold, and my test content is again Latin. And the mid-interview, again, this will look very similar to the preliminary interview. So you've got the student signature here and the preceptor signature here because it's been completed. And scrolling down, you can see each field has been updated and the content here. The reflective. So yeah, again, most sections look very, very similar. The only differing thing is really the fields. So signature, each field, and the content that's been added. Okay, the next section is the progress notes. So this is a little bit different, but again, it will look sort of similar. So here, anybody who isn't the student but has access to the student's placement will be able to go into here and click add new. So if they need to add a progress note, they can do that by clicking add new. And this will open up a form where you can enter in any text. So here you can see the field name, and then there's the text area. So I'll enter that in, click save and finish. You can see that the progress note's been added, and once you're happy with it, you click sign off. And once that's been signed off, you'll see the signature. You won't be able to edit it anymore. Okay, so I'm going to skip over these sections here because they're very, very similar. The 6 domains of competence, this will change depending on the type of placement that's selected. So because this is a long placement, you'll see a more detailed view. The preceptor will update this. If it was a short placement, they'd see just the 6 domains. So instead of seeing this detailed view, they'd see domain 1, domain 2, all the way to domain 6, and they'd say whether it's achieved or not achieved. But because this is a long placement, there's a more detailed view here, and the preceptor would tick the relevant options and save it. And you'll be able to see who updated it the most recent and when it was last updated as well. So as I say, I'll skip over the final interview, learning support plan and action plan, but that looks very similar to the preliminary interview and mid-interview, but they've just got their own unique fields.
And it's important just to note, Max, that this is exactly mimicking the national competency. We haven't changed, we haven't amended, we haven't, modified it. And this is the exact national competency that we use for our 4 years. Might be different in the terms of stages for other education bodies, but the interface is the exact same as the hard copy. So it's important just to note that, because lots of those online will probably be familiar with the different sections you've outlined.
Yep. Okay, and the next one is the placement sign-off. So once every section's been completed and the placement's ready to be closed, you can do that by clicking the placement sign-off. So this is started by the student and is finished by the preceptor. So the student would go in and say, I'm ready to close this placement. Once they've done that, the preceptor can then go in and say, yep, it's finished, I'm happy to close it. And once they've closed it, that's it, the placement's locked, and you'd only be able to view it through a read-only view, which I'll cover in a moment. This has recently been added, so this is the placement sign-off checklist. And here you'll see all of the required sections and other sections that aren't required and the status of each one. So here you can see these are the attendance record. They're required to do 35 hours per week, and that's a total of 210 hours during the course of the placement. And at the moment, this test account's only done 197 hours of that 210. Once they've done 210 or more hours, a tick will appear there. And once they've done the final interview, that's been signed off by the student and the preceptor, a tick will appear here, and the checklist will be completed and the sign-off options will become available. So this checklist is there just to make sure that they've done everything they need to do before it gets closed. So if I go back to the dashboard, I'll show the print view. So you can access this print view here. That'll open a read-only format of the student's portfolio. So you can see all of the attendance records, short placement report. So this is just an area to see a read-only overview of the portfolio without having to go into each individual section. Okay, and then moving on to the reporting. So the CPCs and the year leads will have access to this reporting here. And to do that, they'll just click this. And this will open up a selector. So in this case, I'll search for, say, year 1 general nursing students who have done a placement, say on the 1st of June. So this is just going to cover my test account. So when I submit this, it can take a while to load this because it's just collecting all of the information for each student that it covers and calculating each hours here. But it's much, much quicker than it would be if you were to calculate it all on paper. So as you can see, it's just returned my 1 student, and you can see the overview of the hours for this placement. You can see the total hours here and total absent hours here. If I'd like to see that print view again, I can click the name here, and that will open that print view where you can see their portfolio in a read-only format. And if you'd like to see the week-by-week report as well, you can click this calendar icon, and that will load that week-by-week report. And the final report is the reopen tool. So this is something that's available to CPCs and year leads, where if a section or a placement's been signed off by accident, or if it needs to be reopened, they can do that by just going in that reopen tool, searching for the student, and choosing the section that they'd like to reopen. And I believe covered everything. Yeah. over to you, Louise.
Thanks for that. Thank you very much for that, Max. I see there's a few questions coming up in the column and we're taking note of them. We will address them. But Max, at this point, I think we'll play the actual video because I think that will share and maybe even offer some of the answers to pending questions. So we actually opened out our opened out this opportunity to record the experiences of our students, our CPCs, our SALOs, the tutors, link lecturers and preceptors. Now, obviously, a recording session was set up and we did have representation of all of the stakeholders, but on the actual day, unfortunately, there were some apologies. So the video gives you, I think, a more phenomenological insight into what was it really like for the SALO? What was it really like for allocations or the student or CPC? So Max, if it's okay with you, we might just play this video recording. It's under 9 minutes long, but I think it really encapsulates perhaps a lot of questions and queries that stakeholders may have. And then we can go to the user experience. And I know lots of those that were involved in the video are online, so they can come in or we can deal with the questions then. So if you're okay to stop sharing the dashboard, Max, and we'll then proceed with sharing the actual video of the user's experience. About 9 minutes long, so bear with us. And then we'll go to the opportunity to take some questions or insights from others online. Okay, Max.
Okay, yep, I'll just get that set up now.
So just as Max was referring to, we've continued to tweak this. The checklist is going to be quite important because as we all know, even in hard copy, students submit things thinking they have everything done, but they don't. So this dashboard now doesn't allow them submit timesheets or sign off until everything is actually diligently completed. And as I think it was Anne made the point that, you know, as a linked lecturer, you have a helicopter view of what they've been signed off and what they haven't. Our learning outcomes are for each site and each placement. So the learning outcomes would be at the determination of the student, CPC and the preceptor to ensure that they know what the learning outcomes are for each site. And then obviously when the preceptor is signing off on their domains and they're indicated, that's reflective that they've achieved those learning outcomes. So we don't actually submit them as such per se, but it's the preceptor, associate preceptor, linked lecturer that would ensure that the learning outcomes are actually achieved as such. I know there's also a comment there from somebody from an academic point of view. Linked lecturers have a helicopter view now what's happening, and if they've met with or visited the student, they can update or input progress notes on the dashboard that they've met the student and discussed punctuality or dress code or challenges around proficiency or policies and procedures. So there's access from your desktop after a visit that you don't have to be worrying they didn't have the NCAD or where is it, or it's in the locker or it's in the bag or whatever. So you can upload those and make those notes as you go along. And that's the same, obviously, for CPCs and allocations and SALOs also. So, Max, I always get a little bit nervous on these things when we're sharing videos because I know back in my classroom days, video recordings, you press the link and it doesn't play. So I'm sure you're going to press the link now, Max, and we're going to go on to the video recording. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen and then share it through that. So if let me know if there's any issues with the computer sound, because yeah, I'm doing it through a sharing.
Yeah, that's perfect. So you can go ahead and I'll update you on the sound quality and again that this is being recorded and we can certainly, I know it's been uploaded now on YouTube, so it is accessible as a single viewing also. It's about 9 minutes long.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Max. Yes, can see it okay and hear it. Thank you.
So it's a great initiative in clinical practice. I found it really, really good too. It's very useful.
I have to say it has gone really well. Axia were there always behind us. The minute the MyCat was implemented and the minute that students started to use it, CPCs, preceptors, associate preceptors, it just flowed and naturally took over from the paper format. So my fears were completely alleviated once we got going with it, and it was actually very easy to do.
I think the biggest fear was the acceptance of a digital version among the nurses and the staff in services, and because I think everybody thought it was far bigger and more difficult than what it actually is. So, but once we got past that, it went quite smoothly.
When MyCAD was first introduced, Chris and Max came over and sat down with myself and Sandra, and we went through the format on the paper form, and we adapted that to the digital form of MyCAD so that we kept it exactly the same.
We made sure that those extra training sessions provided for clinical staff students were quite supportive as well of their clinical staff, and making sure that they could access the tool. So it's been quite good overall. So in past, students had a paper format of their NCAD when they went out to clinical placement. As a year tutor, the only time I would see that really would be when I was out in my linked lecturing role, or when the students handed up their NCAD at the end of the semester. And now, as a year tutor, I can oversee their MyCADs from, I suppose, here in the ATU Donegal, and I also can phone them up and speak to them on the phone in relation to their clinical placements and what level or what supports that they might need or inputs that they might need based on what I can see has been achieved at that point.
Another issue we were concerned a bit about was Wi-Fi access, and because a lot of services would have issues with Wi-Fi, but we've actually managed to encounter that, so it's all going quite well.
So I had a placement in the hospital and it was completely fine, easy, and then I had a placement out with the PHN in the public, in the community setting, easy again. They had the Wi-Fi set up, it was fine. It was even easier out in the community because it was more one-on-one, so you actually got to speak to them about it, and they were like really informative as well. So.
The site is very easy to use. I've used it on different devices. I've used it both on a mobile phone or a tablet and on a computer screen. So it's very easy to navigate. It's very user friendly. No apps are required. It's a website. So as long as we go through either Google or Safari, we can access, through to the website as you would any other website. So no apps are required.
Well, I mainly used the computer in the hospital setting and all to use it, but then say if I had to do like the start of my mid-interview or like the personal stuff that you do on the MyCAD, I did it at the home on my laptop. I haven't had to add anything. I just able to look it up on the internet and you just log in and it's there.
It's the exact same document, it's just online. So yeah, they were the only challenges, is that maybe the lack of awareness, but nothing to do with the actual website itself.
The team provided training from the onset and got our opinions all the way through, and they reassured us that basically it was just going to be the paper system that we have online, and that is what it is. It's the same headings, it's the same wording, so you're not thrown by any of it.
I have found the site very user-friendly and extremely easy to use, and no problems finding what I need to find on the site. Very easy to navigate.
I've actually found it really good. I think it's far better than the old version, really, where it was all, hard copy and paper. I think it's better overall. I mean, everything's in the one place. It's very easy to access, and it's easier too for the nurses as well, because especially in busy environments, like you can log on at home. It's just very, very, very accessible. The paper record we would have had, we had no way to view those until they were submitted to us at the end of, say, they held 3 weeks worth of information. But now with this, we can check in any time that we want. So, and I know the CPCs use it in this way. So it's not a case of when these records would have landed on my desk, I might have found an error and that person was gone, they were in a new placement or they were finished. This way we've been able to keep track as the days go by, because it's there, and then we have that access which we didn't have before.
I definitely like the versatility or how user-friendly this is. We don't have to worry about remembering or keeping a document safe. It's all there and there's a full record. We can look back and there's a full record of all our placements where we've been beforehand. So yeah, definitely this is the way forward. It's just to get everybody into the same way of thinking.
Well, we go up and visit our students up in clinical practice as well, so I can view their document at any time now in the digital format. So I suppose I can have more of a planned, focused visit whenever I'm going up to see them. So I might be able to see if a student has been out with a clinical nurse specialist or an advanced nurse practitioner. We're trying to empower the staff as well in relation to using the tool, so that the fears are not around utilising the tool and the assessment, so that they can just focus on the assessment, which is what you want in clinical practice.
Especially for the first time setting it up, it can be quite difficult, just a new system. But yeah, you can just play the video, nurses, students, everyone can watch that, and it's step by step through it.
In clinical practice, they're not just developing their clinical skills, they're also developing their digital literacy as well with the new tool, and around working in relation to these digital tools as well. So it's a great initiative in clinical practice.
We've been very much involved as a group. We found that the development team, Axia, they've really listened to our suggestions. They've taken everything we wanted changes on. They've taken them into consideration, and they've worked very closely with us to develop this really, really good tool.
I don't know if we're allowed to name drop, but I'll name drop Max because he's been absolutely fantastic. He did so much at the start. It was himself and Chris. And as soon as you have an issue, they are back to you, and we have the Axia support email. And now, they log your request, you get a ticket number. So if you ever need to reference it, you can say, this is the ticket number for my request. But I think, to be honest, you've never waited more than 2 days, if even, to have something resolved.
So whenever you transition from the paper to the online one, the exact same questions are there, the exact same things have to be filled in, but it's just in an online format. You've got accessibility to it anywhere. It's not a case of, where's my book? I have to find the document, I have to carry it with me, that you can log on from any phone, tablet, laptop, computer, and it's there. So it's easy, it's they don't have to think about carrying the book around. I actually use a lot of devices for it. So if I was in the hospital and I was with my preceptor, we'd be going through it and we'd be using the in-house PC that we would have there. At home, I would use my laptop for it, and then if you're signing off your attendance for your hours, I would just do it on my phone, and I would click over my hours, because it's something that's, it's clicking attendance is literally clicking a button to say that you have, attended and you've completed them hours. So you can use anything, you just log on. It's just a web page. So it's not an app that you have to download. So you can use it, with anything, any devices. Don't knock it till you try it. So it's a case of log on and have a look at it. It's the exact same document as the paper copy. It's just online, and once you start filling it in, it flows so much better than the paper document, and you don't have the worry of, where's my document, I'm taking it here and there, because if you lose that paper document, it's a massive issue. But this is online, you can access it from any device. You can print a copy out if you're wanting a hard copy of it, for your own reflection, but it's there, it's accessible on every online device, so it's easy, user-friendly.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Max. And just for the the record, I just want to acknowledge that we were at the Education Awards 2023 last Thursday night in Dublin, and we were entered into the category of Best Industry Business Academic Collaboration. Here's the proof. I don't know whether you can see it. There were 8 in the category from all universities all over Ireland, and this collaboration with our HSC, Allied Healthcare Professionals, Axia and ATU Donegal won this award in a very competitive competition. So we must be doing something right when we've been looked at from an external body, from a collaboration and engagement point of view. So I just want to again reiterate the importance of the agility and the resilience, particularly our practice development, our CPCs, our SALOs and our preceptors, because really they were the change agents at the coalface, in the wards, in the settings, in the communities, troubleshooting with the students, and then obviously our link lectures pouring in. But we know that it's in the clinical area that proficiency and competencies are achieved and where they're signed off. So there was a huge amount of troubleshooting and problem solving that happened with Max, and I think it's only appropriate that Julie name checked Max, because he's been absolutely vital in terms of responding to our queries, some long and some short. So at this stage, that's the dashboard navigated via Max's tour. We've looked at the video, you've heard the experiences. We would have preferred to have obviously more preceptors and clinical staff, but like with any recording, we had representation on the day and some people weren't able to attend. And then some people just don't like coming on, you know, and being recorded, which we respect that also. So I just want to commend the students as well. So I think they gave a very good representation of the user experience on the ground. So I'm just going to open it to the floor. I'm aware that there's a number of staff from an ATU point of view, both clinical and academia online, that were involved in the video. But if any of the staff want to say anything before we open it up, I know there's a couple of questions we want to deal with. So we have obviously a system of year tutors across our 4 years in 3 of the disciplines. We have mental health, general and intellectual disability. We've also program leads, but the link lecture there's a designated link lecture to each and every site, and then the year tutor has a helicopter view over that program. So Elaine and Morris and Lydia would be our year tutors in year 1, which is a very important year, because really we started this year afresh, September 2022, impacting on our first years, because if we can get it right at the beginning, it means it'll follow through, because they've been exposed to nothing other than MyCAD, whereas integrating it from a transitional point of view for others, it was a little bit more cumbersome, because they have been exposed to the paper copy, and it's a little bit like moving from going into the bank to now going online. And that's been the same phenomenon for so many of us in terms of moving from the hard copy or the face-to-face to online or digital solutions. So I don't know whether any of the year tutors want to come in, or our SALOs. I know Julie and others are online, but I'll open it now to the floor if anybody wants to come in. If you want to raise your hand or just unmute your mic and come on in. There's Jonathan with his name up. So Jonathan, do you want to come in, and then I'll go to Chris?
Hello everyone, and thanks for the presentation. Yeah, so just maybe to give an update, maybe the year 4 and the program lead for mental health. And again, I suppose the year 4 was a group that had used, you know, the paper trail, but very easily adapted, because I think they, you know, did see the benefit as well. It was nearly an impossible task for us to collect NCADs without any errors. And again, given the geographical spread of our placement sites from Carndonagh right down as far as Carrick and Shannon, it was awful to have to send students back to get signatures and things. So the students very quickly learned the benefit of that as well, and even up until 4th year, where they had been used to the old system. So again, that was they adapted very well. And again, the other side of this is introducing that whole concept of digital literacy, you know, for what is to come, possibly portfolios and different things. So I think the students could actually see the other side of the learning that happens here as well. You know, getting students used to digital literacy, and that was a great benefit. Because they can't be signed off unless the computer literally says no, if everything isn't completed. And it also gives that, you know, overview of placements for link lectures and year tutors to be able to have that helicopter view. So it has worked quite well, particularly for the 4th years.
Great, thanks for that, Jonathan. I think the portfolio again links in with fourth years and the expectation for our graduates now to be looking towards the National Competency Scheme, which will be coming down the route, and that digital engagement from a regulatory point of view. So that'll link in with them and their skills also. Chris, did you want to come in? And then I have a number of hands and I'll call them in order. Thank
I'll
you.
be just very briefly, Louise, thanks. I just wanted to clarify on the checklist, just to say to people, it's there to give proper guidance about where a particular placement's at. I think there's an understanding that there are times where, for all sorts of reasons, various things can't get signed off. But this way, I think we're going to. I think there's a view that will increase the number of ones that are complete. But just to say, it is possible to keep 2 placements open at the same time, which was a kind of requirement, quite rightly, that our colleagues brought up from Letterkenny. So just to say that's just for clarification, really. Thanks, Louise.
Great. Okay, thanks very much. So the next hand was Breda and then Richard.
Yeah, no,
hi.
not me.
I would agree with everything. I'm year 4 lead as well, and agree with what Jonathan has said. Now, the fourth year students, because they're going out an internship, we started them with the NCAD, and there was a question I see in the chat about, did we all go all together? Or was it for the 4 years? But we weren't actually ready for them in September, so we couldn't go all together in September because we had NMAI visit earlier on last semester, and we just weren't prepared. We would have if we had been all prepared, but we weren't. So in planning it, we decided that we'd went with initially, it was first years when they went out they went out in November, and then what we have is that the fourth years and the second years when they went out in placement in January that year. So we started with the fourth years in January. Now the fourth years themselves, their question was obviously, why do we have to do it? Because, you know, this is our last set of placements. So all I can say is that, you know, we provide a lot of questions and answer sessions, provide a lot of support. And we did like online sessions with them, and like they were facilitated by Max as well on numerous times. And we got the students to use their phones in class to log on and do everything. So preparation was part of that. So I think that prepared to adapt to that change, it worked well. We had and even like going out into placement now, a lot of the issues, and I have to say, like Julie said, she didn't want to name drop, but I have to say that our CPCs have been exceptional in helping support us and getting us on the line, because without them we wouldn't have been able to support it. So there's been very much a good relationship between the likes of the HEI and the clinical placement or practice development in order to get this up and line, and that's like paramount for it. And also that we have to say too, the support then from Max, but it works well.
Okay, thanks for that, Breda. Elaine?
Yeah, I'm the year 1 lead, and I suppose the year 1s didn't have anything else. They only had the digital tool and they ran with it. But again, to echo Breda's point in relation to clinical placement, the CPCs were fantastic, because obviously, you know, people are anxious about using the digital tool, although the document itself didn't change. They were fantastic at instilling positivity into preceptors in the clinical area and confidence around using the tool in clinical area as well. The students ran with it, which was fantastic, and they were good supports to preceptors out in the clinical setting as well, getting them set up, getting us attached to the MyCAD, and it's a learning curve for all of us. And again, I'm at the point now where I'm signing off on their competency assessment documents for the year. So again, it's a learning curve there as well for myself. And we're working so much more closely with SALOs. We're working in relation to allocations with Bernie and Sandra as well, around looking at the hours and making sure the students can be signed off. So there's very much a collaborative approach in relation to the MyCAD document, which is fantastic.
Okay, thanks for that. Elaine, I'm just conscious of if any of our Northwest clinical partners wanted to come in, and then I'll open it to the floor. If there's anybody online, if you want to unmute your mic or your camera, or that's fine. Yes,
Louise, I think Catherine Kelly had a question.
Catherine, go ahead. Sorry, Catherine, just see your hand popped up there now. Thank you, Catherine.
Yeah. Hi, Louise. Just to say, it's been very much so an evolving process over the past year, and we found it very successful in ID services and one of the CPCs. And I suppose it's important also to note that if any errors were made on it, we have the power to reopen the document at the request of the students. And I think that Max has kind of given us more and more versatility in relation to, you know, how we can reopen and how we can make amendments as we go. But it's been very successful in our service. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Catherine. And just a couple of quick questions, and just to address those, the costs. So we would charge our students normally, it used to be 15 to 16 euro to produce an NCAD. With inflation and everything else post-demic, it now is with VAT 20 euro per year. So we would have had students to pay that per year. So the cost now is the equivalent of a license with NCAD, and it's at the same price. So it is actually, it's the exact same price for the student that they pay 20 euro for obviously the hard copy and now the license. I'm sure as time and maybe it develops or it evolves, that cost model would have to be addressed. Or look, it's not for me to discuss that. Chris can come into that, but you know, it would depend on the size and the interaction in terms of the size of your education, your higher education, and the number of students and cohorts that you would actually have. But it's cost effective as far as we're concerned, and the benefits and the opportunities of accessing information means that we're actually saving a lot of money in terms of travel and documentation being submitted prematurely. Chris, did you want to come in there to talk around that?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of confirm the direction of travel you were saying, Louise. So, so basically, somewhere between 20 and 25 euros would be per student, but not obviously all the other accounts that are there are not chargeable. It's just a student account that we charge for. Just to explain what that kind of covers, it covers the ability for not students, but for the team that Letterkenny to come to our team for support, which although increasingly, as Catherine alluded to, we're helping the teams out there to actually do sort out their own issues, which is a lot better really than coming to us. But we are there, and I think we would said quite rightly, we're responsive. It covers things like we have to continually update our software, so and all the other measures we're doing. But yeah, as you say, Louise, I think if there are bigger other universities will come up with other arrangements potentially. But if people work on that sort of assumption between 20 and 25 per student, that's about roughly where we are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Chris. There's a couple of questions there. I'll go in reverse order and up the way. Just with regards to the signature, you have to register and you have to be attached to the NCAD. So by the mere fact that you have to register and it's a password and you're accessing, you can't be on an NCAD unless you've been listed. So it isn't obviously a digital signature by the mere fact that you're accessing the system. That's one of the questions there, to ensure that both preceptor are logged in, so that the student will obviously align the preceptor or the linked lecturer or whoever it might be. So that's Josie's question. Did you want to come in, Chris?
Yeah, just to add to that, arguably it's far more robust than in the jargon, a wet signature or a computer signature, because just to say every interaction that takes place with the portfolio is linked back to the username and password that's been used to take that action. It's very, very difficult for anybody, and thankfully, we don't get involved in many cases where people are concerned about somebody fraudulently, because actually it's kind of very much more transparent process, and it's incredibly difficult for somebody to deny that their username and password was used in relation to that particular action. So having obviously done this across in the UK for almost a decade now, I would make a very strong case to say it's far more robust than any kind of signature process that's been in place before, really. Thank you.
And there was another question about progress notes. So once again, you're registered, whether it's a linked lecture or you can actually input on the progress notes. And the learning outcomes, I think I've addressed that in the chat. The learning outcomes are at local level in the clinical area. It's the preceptor, associate preceptor, that will sign off that they've been achieved, and that's reflective of the domains and the indicators. Does anybody else want to come in now? I think I've addressed most of them in the chat, but please feel free to put up your hand if you have any other question or query or contribution to make. Okay, I don't see or hear any. So I just want to acknowledge and thank everybody for their kind wishes and congratulations in the chat. And again, this is really just to, to share our experience with you with regards to moving to a hard copy to an online dashboard. And we hope it's been helpful. We hope it's triggered maybe some thought process with regards to your own education body or clinical area or allied healthcare professional, and how you might actually look at this. And Chris, I might actually hand over to you for the concluding remarks, because I know you're certainly, available to meet with any individuals. This is about us as a team collectively in a collaboration, sharing the experience, but anything future will go via Chris, not through Louise McBride and ATU Donegal. So I just want to put that word out there before I get an incoming flood of emails. So Chris, we might hand over to you for the last word, and you can wrap up if there's any other questions or queries anybody wants to raise.
Yeah, I think it's great to see all the those are queries coming in, and first of all, can I just add my thanks both to you all attending, but crucially to the team here and to Louise. Somebody with any of these processes has to take the brave step and saying we'll give it a try. And then hopefully that opens the doors for other people to try it as well. So without the team here, all the CPCs, all the sailovers, tutors, students, etc., without them, it's wouldn't have happened. In terms of process, I think what I want to say in time it takes, I think we've spent a lot of time here at ATU Donegal, Letterkenny, getting the process right. I think we're very happy to show people again, go through some of the detail you're asking, and so the best way of getting that is to come to me, as Louise rightly says, and we will make time to do things online to be able to show you those particular areas that maybe obviously we haven't had time to show you today. So please don't feel this is the end of the dialogue. You do come to me, and very happy to talk through anything that you've seen today. In terms of actually how long does it take, so I meant to get to what I was going to say. Well, actually the reality is now we can move quite quickly, because I think the team here has worked together to produce a site that now works. It covers every base, I think. It is important to engage all stakeholders, and Louise and the team here were really involved in doing that. And so that's part of the process, but you can certainly do what the team did it here and incrementally release it out across your cohorts, depending on your own judgments about when that's best to do. Our approach as a company is you're very much in charge, really, with relation to how you want to do it, and so very happy to have discussions with you about how we managed the implementation with the team here, not least, as I say, through all the people involved and so on.
Julie Gillespie and then Maggie Woods have got questions as well.
Okay, so we'll just take those and then I'll wrap up finally. Julie?
Hi, yeah, apologies, my camera's very temperamental. I've tried to turn it on there. I just see a wee question at the side saying attendance records. Can you briefly talk through that process if you have time? I know Max did open up, whenever he went into the section where you typed in year 1 and you put in your time frame. Beside the name of each student, you'll see a box that's a wee calendar, and that calendar, we had asked for it to be broke down into a weekly report. So now, it was again through using it and through trial and error, we thought, how would it make it a bit easier for us when we view them? So every suggestion that we had, the team put forward, like they rectified it for us, and one of them was this weekly report, and the dates are in chronological order, and it's broken down for each week, and that has made a huge difference for us in terms of checking their attendance records. And there are other views as well that you can use that Max showed, but that weekly report is the one that I think I use as the real substitute for the paper timesheets. And you can go in as well and check for sign off. The good thing is like everything we've put in these sort of countermeasures that you know, it has to be verified before it'll be included in as an actual completed hour. Because what we're finding is really the only issue with the system is student error, I think, and you know, possibly they might finish up without getting a date signed off. So by us putting in all these checklists is sort of fixing that issue. But that's what's great about the weekly report. It'll only show what's verified hours wise, and you can check in as you go. But I was just thinking as well, I'll put my email address in the chat box to the side. So if anybody, any silos want to reach out with anything, you know, specific about attendance, feel free to reach out for me, and we can go from there.
Thanks, Julie. That's really helpful. Maggie, you had a question? Hi.
Yeah, I just wondered who enters all the placement sites. You know, there's a lot of placement sites, and presumably that's quite a lot of work. I just wondered who does that.
Well, so Maggie, basically, I think we work together with the allocations office.
Right.
I'll wait for. So basically, we get in the jargon a data dump of all the placements, and we then can insert those directly into the system. So you'll have a list of all the placements.
Right. Okay.
We get
okay,
that in kind of a spreadsheet or whatever. So anybody who works for me knows I'm not technical, but I know we've got a very very quick process.
Yeah,
that's
good.
And put them straight in. So there's not, and then of course we can edit it as we go through. Yeah, it works really well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great question, Catherine.
Hi, in relation to Josie's question, she put in there if there's a need, if you can do the any of the interviews online as opposed to face-to-face. How we're managing that really is that we do always first and foremost ensure that there is a face-to-face interview, and we already know the importance of that. But there is times when the students don't get the opportunity, maybe towards the last week, to meet their preceptor or associate preceptor face-to-face. So as a last resort, you know, we do say that it is an option that they can actually look at doing a phone call, both have a MyCAD open and doing the last interview online. But again, like that, it is preferable that it's face-to-face. And the other thing I wanted to add as well is that we actually do have a CPC group. And so if any of CPCs here around the country, and this does get introduced, if you have any questions, send an email. I think the majority of CPCs should be on it. Thank you.
Catherine, thank you. That's really helpful, and it's a lovely offer that you've made. I think that's important. I think I'll maybe just sum up, unless there's no more questions, with
nobody else with a hand up, Chris.
Just very there is a developing body of evidence that actually the online system does improve the quality of the assessment that takes place. Because actually people are freed up from the process, the concerns about the process, to focus in on what I think they most want to do, which is to, as we all do, to assist nurses with their professional development. And there's a very interesting document from Bournemouth University where they compared the paper portfolios with the electronic portfolios, and what they were able to get is to see is the way the quality of the feedback went up electronically. So this is all about the thing that we all want, which is to improve the learning experience for everybody. Yeah, I'm really glad that you've committed to coming today and hearing from us. And as you can tell, I'm grateful to CPC's offer. I'm grateful to Julie for her offer as well. And thank you very much for your time today. It's much appreciated. Take care.